Ruth Davidson, the darling of the Tory Liberal wing, made a keynote speech about the party's future. Parliamentary insiders sense the Tory tribes are mustering for a new battle over the party's future. The Tory Reform Group, whose president is the arch-Europhile former Chancellor Kenneth Clarke, this week named 14 MPs as parliamentary patrons. Anna Soubry, one of the most outspoken pro-Brussels voices in the party, and Justine Greening, the former education secretary whose opposition to more grammar schools led to her falling out with Theresa May, are among their number. Insiders say the group is determined to raise its profile in an attempt to counter the noisy European research group of Brexiteer MPs led by Jacob Rees-Mogg. Formed in 1975, the Tory Reform Group drew together middle-of-the-road Tories nervous about the rise of Mrs. Thatcher and her radical, free-market championing allies. It trumpeted the One Nation Toryism of former Prime Ministers Benjamin Disraeli and Harold Macmillan. In the political language of the time, the group was the home of the wettest of the wets, lined up against the dry Thatcherites. The Tory Reform Group's renaissance this week is far from the only sign that a new generation of wets is banding together. Bright Blue, a new liberal conservative think tank vowing to be pro-market, not free market, has been active for some time. And a growing number of Tory figures have begun speaking out about the need for new ideas that seek to tame the free market. UK Parliament. Brexit is the one policy area where the Tory wets are frustrated. Scottish Tory leader Ruth Davidson, the darling of the Tory Liberal wing, made a keynote speech about the party's future direction this week. Her ideas included a call for large-scale state intervention in the housing market to build more affordable homes, tax rises to fund the NHS, and relaxed immigration. Chancellor Philip Hammond is expected to soon make a speech urging the Tories to ditch Thatcherite capitalism in favor of a new market economy to attract young voters. Such calls for a break with the supposed Tory commitment to free market economics come as a surprise to party figures not caught up in the new wet resurgence. Tory MP Conor Burns, who was close to Mrs. Thatcher in her later years, admitted on Twitter this week he was finding these arguments that we should break from Thatcherism very odd. He added, "Looking at levels of spending of taxpayers' money and the tax burden, we broke with Thatcherism a long time ago. Under Mrs. May, the government has adopted an industrial strategy for a degree of economic planning, increased state intervention in company boardrooms, slowed the pace of deficit reduction, and abandoned any pretense of cutting tax to fuel economic growth." Many MPs think her approach shows that far from needing to band together to fight for the future, the wets are already in control of the party. Brexit is the one policy area where the Tory wets are frustrated as long as the Prime Minister sticks to her promise of a full break with Brussels. They can still hope to force a compromise that keeps Britain more closely tied to the EU than many Brexiteers would like, given the balance of opinion in the Commons as the next parliamentary battles over her exit legislation loom. Getty. Tory wets hardly need to fight to seize control of their party policies agenda. Tory wets hardly need to fight to seize control of their party policies agenda. Their increasingly coordinated activity is more directed at retaining that control when the time comes to find a successor to Mrs. May. Tory Brexiteers have been so focused on the prize of freeing the UK from the EU that they are behind their rivals in preparing for the ideological war over the party's future. If they are not careful, they could find their hopes for the future drowned by the rise of the wets. Group of dashes. Labour considers giving up National Party status. Cowards flinch and traitors sneer, according to the Labour Party's anthem, the red flag. Yet discussions going on within Jeremy Corbyn's party suggest there will be plenty of flinching within the ranks when the next general election comes. Senior Labour figures are considering that the party will not contest a seat it has no hope of winning at the national poll expected in 2022. It could be the first time in living memory the party fails to put up candidates in virtually every mainland constituency at a general election. A motion proposing a change in the party rules allowing the move is being prepared for debate at the Labour conference in Liverpool this September. Concentrating on fighting winnable seats might help conserve the party's dwindling election war chest. Corbyn's party is lagging far behind the Tories in collecting donations for the Fighting Fund. Figures released by the Electoral Commission this week showed that Mr. Corbyn's party is lagging far behind the Tories in collecting donation for the Fighting Fund. Labour accepted just £1.49 million in the first 3 months of this year, while £4.7 million flowed into Tory coffers. Mr. Corbyn's hard left leadership has repulsed many wealthy former donors, leaving the party more reliant than ever on trade union cash. And some Labour activists argue that keeping out of the fight in some constituencies could deny the Tories seats by reducing the split in the anti-Conservative vote. With Labour candidates standing aside, Lib Dem or even Green Party candidates might have a better chance in some areas, they claim. Yet in shying away from the fight, a significant number of seats would deny a full democratic choice to thousands of voters. It would also be a betrayal of the dream of James Carharty and the other founders of the Labour Party, who yearned to get working-class MPs elected to Parliament because they felt the old Liberal Party failed to represent their interests. The fact the idea is even being discussed is yet another sign that, under Jeremy Corbyn, Labour no longer aspires to be a national party of government and is fast turning into a metropolitan protest movement.